What's up, everybody? This is Bobby D here. Bobby D here with yet another podcast for your viewing and listening pleasure. I've got a good friend today because everybody that comes on this podcast is really a good friend because I wouldn't have any enemies on my podcast yet. But I want everybody to please welcome Mr. Cory Garrison.
3, 2, 1.
Cory, how you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful today. How you doing today, Bobby D?
I'm doing well. I'm glad you shot me a message. I hadn't talked to you in a second, and I know you.
2 years.
Yeah, it's been a second, and you asked me you wanted to come on and shoot the shit, right?
Yeah, I wanted to just come on and shoot the shit.
Yeah, exactly. Not trying to take anything away from your dad, because your dad and Cody's got the shooting the shit thing going on,
Yes, sir.
and everything. But yeah, man. How have you been?
I've been good, yes, sir. I've been working at Quality Foods, made it up to co-manager there. Thankful for all the lessons that I learned throughout the years of wrestling to get myself into the position that I am now.
Yeah.
And
you said that you got promoted.
yes, sir. I've been promoted. I got married July 15th, 2022. The week I came back from my honeymoon, probably like July 23rd, 24th, they had a promotion on the table for me. And
Oh, wow.
the money was just too much.
Yeah, I was fixing to say,
turn away.
is it the money? Because I know retail, when I worked in retail, it seemed to be the money was always good. I mean, everybody talks about, time versus money and, the job versus money, good money but hard job. I know retail is probably one of the hardest jobs. And
It's difficult.
nowadays, I don't know if I could do retail.
I understand. It's definitely tough. You got to deal with the customers. You got to deal with people under you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to deal with. I've been trying to. I guess this one guy taught me. He said, change your lens. He said, change how you view people. He said, if you think everybody's stupid, everybody's gonna be stupid.
Yeah.
He said, if you see the talents in them, he said, go for it and try to teach them more of their talents. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Trying to see that, trying to imagine the customers with a sign on their neck that says, I'm in a bad mood today because my dad died, because my mom died, my cat died, my dog died.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way. It's hard to do that some days, especially when they're cussing at you and saying, F you, F that.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, well, just, there's a door.
I've had a few in my day, disgruntled customers. But like you said, that's interesting way of thinking. It's something that I've been kind of struggling with nowadays, is trying to think in more of a positive sense, because, we tend to veer on negativity. And like you said, if you view people as negative, then that's kind of what's going to come off as, because if you're looking for that. And that's one thing I've talked to a lot of people about, is the fact that I look at people in a negative lens sometimes. Like, I'll say a lot of positive things, but I like to veer onto that one negative thing, and somebody's like, why? Like, you can't let your day get ruined. You can't let your life get ruined by two people, or one person, when there's 15 other people that are counting on you and appreciate. And it kind of goes into, like, what I do for a living. And like you said, you've kind of taken the reverse path. I started off at retail and I veered into more of the coaching, mentorship. And you said that your wrestling and your mentorship is what led you into getting a good job like this and being able to deal with people. Because, I mean, people, it's different, but is it really that different?
It is different for sure, because now I got 49 employees that
Mm-hmm.
work under me. And,
Yeah.
I got 49 families that I have to try to bring business into the store for and provide for, and make sure that these guys have a job, make sure they're doing their job, and make sure they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's awesome when you get a young guy in there and you can coach him up. I like to use the bosses like to use the term training. But I like to use the word coaching, because it's the same principle.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it is different. But the one thing I know about it is, like, so when I met you, I met you a year before, but I got back into school,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got into weight training at 4th block, and then I had wrestling practice right after weight training, and then I'd come to your gym on Monday nights.
Yeah.
Right after, so there was 8-9 hours total of working out, keeping your heart rate up,
Oh, yeah.
as well as I do, that wrestling's probably the most difficult sport in terms of cardio.
Yeah, I think we both agree on that because I'm very biased when it comes to wrestling. I mean, people love to talk about football, love to talk about basketball, love to talk about baseball, soccer, track, everything. But wrestling was always the one sport to me personally that I steered toward because it was an individual sport. I've always been an individual sport type of person because it's either you have the ball all the time or you don't have the ball any of the time. I don't like to share when it comes to that. But with that being said, it is tough because the spotlight is on you in wrestling for the whole match. However long it takes you to either pin the guy or get pinned or to go the distance. The ball is on. You got the ball the entire time. That's what my coach used to always say.
Yes, and I like that. And your coach is still around, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brooks. Yeah, I heard that he was. He was winding down. I mean, I know he's still involved, and I think he still coaches. But I think as far as the school stuff, I think
that's what I heard too.
Yeah, he's winding down, and I've said this before, but like when I was his wrestler, I hated him. But the minute, but you grow up and you understand the lessons that you
appreciate it
mm-hmm.
more.
You
become a man, and you're like, okay, he was teaching me how to be a man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
I think you were blessed in the circumstance that your coach was. I'm pretty sure he's a lot older than you. I could be wrong there, but my coach graduated in 2006.
Yeah.
And he was coaching. He had already finished half his college, so I had a young coach.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I felt like he wanted to be our friend, and it wasn't until my senior year he was like, "I'm not your friend, dude." He said, "I can't be your friend."
And that's it. That's one of the biggest lessons I've taken. Doing martial arts and coaching, training, mentorship, all that. That's one of the biggest lessons as I've gotten older. Every year, I embrace that more and more because I have students. Like the other night, I had to get onto a student because lack of effort. And I mean, every student I got is great students. And not to get off subject for a second, but I'm a firm believer in I don't want a lot of people. I want the right people and quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
And so every student that I have is really good in the potential department. Like they all have potential. Now what they do with it is ultimately going to be up to them. It's like leading the horse to water. I mean, you can lead him all day long, but I had to get on to him and he kind of got upset, but then I had to explain to him that I'm not doing it to try to make you upset. I'm not doing it for my own ego. It's to pull something out of you that you might not think you have, because when we're young, you don't know your potential, and that's what the great thing about a coach and a mentor is.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And, I like the word potential, but to me, potential might be a made-up word because it's what you would do if you were in their position.
Yes.
You don't see necessarily their potential. You see what you would do if you were them. And, I get young guys in all the time who would probably make the greatest store manager of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they're just there to make their $9 an hour and move on with their life. And I get that. I got this one kid who's going to Georgia Tech for engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a junior at high school right now, but that's where he's going. And he's like the most easily coachable kid. You show him something one time, and it's like, man, is this how my coaches felt about me, or is it the other guy over here that listens to nothing I say?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And, it's interesting, and I that was kind of off topic with the potential word, but potential really is just what you would do if you were back in their shoes, and it's such a beautiful thing because then the script gets flipped on you, and you're looking at it from a whole different lens, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you talk about flipping the script. That's kind of the way I've been struggling with lately. Is before we come on here, I was telling you about how I've always been a lead by example and a do person. Like if I want you to jump off the building, I'm going to be the first one to do it to show you how it's done.
Right.
And as I've gotten older, I've started understanding my mortality a little bit more and understanding that I've got one body. And it's starting to kind of show its age a little bit in that terms, but my mental side is conflicting with it because mentally I'm still 20. You can probably see my room here and the room in there. I'm probably still a kid. Dare say, but my body's starting to tell me, hey, it's time to transition to not necessarily being the guy in the trenches, but the guy that's leading. And I've never really been a good leader. Because then that's how I've led by example. But yeah, it's so hard sometimes to understand that, to be that leader now and not to be, can't think of the word, the student, but be the teacher.
Right. And it's weird because, when I first I've been co-manager going on 3 years now. And when I first took the job, I got the job because I was the hardest worker in the building, maybe the company.
Yeah.
I went in there with my wrestling mindset that nobody in this building is going to outwork me today.
Yes.
And that if I see them outworking me, guess what? I'm going to step it up a notch. But one of my managers, like in the corporate office, had to pull me off to the side. And he's like, "Man, why are you doing all this?" He said, "I've been here 30 minutes and you've been down every single aisle and worked on every single aisle." He said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "The job's got to be done, man." I said, "The job. This is why y'all promoted me to make sure the job's done."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, look," he said, "right now you're after the money, right? Every young man's after money. If you're not, then good for you. Keep being a dog, chase that dream."
Yeah.
But he said, "If you're after the money right now, which I know you are," he said, "we're paying you as much as we're ever going to pay you to be a hard worker." He said, "There's different levels to it." He said, "The people who work the hardest in America often get paid the lowest." He said, "But the people that have the mindset that they're going to go in there and make sure that Bobby D gets his job done, and then make sure that Tony D gets his job done, and bring them guys to this level, and then he brings himself to this level at the time," he said, "that's the guy that starts making money."
And that's interesting that you say that because you're kind of a rarity because, how old are you?
I'm 26 years old.
26 years old. And I know a lot of people, including myself, looks at the younger generation, looks at, I always, people like that your age and people that I've been around in the mid-20s, I always tell them that I'm daddy. I'm old enough to be their dad now. So I look at that as could be your dad. So you're definitely a different generation. And I think about a lot of the people always talk about like the young generation's lazy, but when I was your age, it was said about me. It was said about I was the lazy generation and I was the one that was never going to make it and stuff. And that's that. Do you think, I guess the point I'm making is, do you think that your generation is lazier, or do you think it's just a generational thing? Because you're definitely a hard worker. Since I've known you, I mean, with wrestling, with work ethic, with respect. I mean, you're kind of a rarity nowadays. And is that something we're losing?
In a way, yes, but I also think we're young, dumb, and a lot of us are. And, I got to experience, and it's probably got its own flaws. I got to experience things very early on that I was like, hey, I got to grow up. I got to grow up. If I want something, I got to go get it. Nobody else is going to bring it to me. Yeah. And it seems like oftentimes people, I don't want to say a more privileged life because we all got things that go on in our lives, and I had a great life. My dad was a great guy. A lot of people might say a lot of bad things about him, but ultimately, my dad did his job with me and my brother. Yeah. And, everything else beside of that, that's none of my business. My dad did his job. Yeah. And so I think a lot of it comes down to who my dad was, having me out there splitting wood at 6, 7, 8 years old. But overall, I don't think my generation is necessarily lazy. I think my generation and the generation under me is going to be the generation that changes the world in terms of technology and the way things are done and the way you buy groceries and the way you eat. And I think we'll see that, but they're not mature enough yet to that point. And I think as time goes on, you will see more people, and I have no facts on this, but you will see people maturing at a later age. But when they hit their peaks will be higher than older generations' peaks. Because I've heard that all my life. Your generation's lazy, your generation's lazy. And I always want to ask the, 45, 50, 55-year-old man the question, how much time you putting into us? Yeah. How much time you put into us? You can't say nothing. Yeah. Because who I am and the way I've developed, I would have never gotten here. And this is how I look at my bosses now. Sometimes they drive me crazy. This and this and this and this ain't done. You need to do it this way. But I would have never been the man I am right now, sitting right here, if it wasn't for meeting Bobby Popham when I was 16 years old. If it wasn't for meeting Patrick Lowendick when I was 14 years old. Even Scott Baird at 21 years old. Yeah. It's old guys who knew what they were talking about and knew what they were doing that really put time into me. Yeah. And Chris Damien's another one. Yeah. Yeah. It's guys like that who really sat down with me and talked to me. And, just because you were my coach doesn't mean I have to take your mindset 100%. Yeah. I can take the things I like about your mindset, and I can take the things I liked about Damien's mindset, and I can take the things I liked about my dad's mindset. And then I I'm very blessed and fortunate that I had a lot of grown men put time into me.
Yeah.
And I think it's because all those guys saw something into me because of the foundation that my dad laid down
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Yeah.
And you guys were able to build on it and take it further
Yeah.
than my dad necessarily could. And to me, that's awesome. You know, and I still see it nowadays as these 6-year-old guys who've been in the grocery business 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they started when they were 16 years old bagging groceries.
Yeah.
They're teaching me things. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm like, when I first took the job, I was like, man, shut up, leave me alone. You know,
Yeah.
just let me do my job.
Yeah.
You're not teaching me anything. But now that I'm looking back on it, I guess being a seasoned vet, you know, that's the word that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
But being a seasoned vet in the grocery business, you know, I'm appreciative of it because they're just trying to take me to that next level, and whether that's my career for the rest of my life or whether I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, I can't do it no more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's huge.
Yeah. Question I have that I just thought about while you were explaining all that is you were saying that you don't think that your generation is necessarily lazy. You think that like the older generation is not really putting a lot of time and effort into the younger generation. But I can understand both sides. Why do you think? Do you think a lot of the younger generation has the mentality that you said you had at first? And it's not necessarily that coachable, or do you think it's kind of like a wall or a protective layer that the older generation needs to kind of be patient with and understand, and that way then you can pull somebody, because I see that a lot with young kids. They're just not, you know, like my stepson, for instance. He's early 20s, and he's definitely at that age he doesn't know what he wants to do, but I've taken all different types of approaches with him. I've taken the strict old school approach. Then I've taken the abrasive approach. Then I've taken the soft, gentle parenting approach. And now I'm on the try to understand approach. And I think that seems to be the best nut to crack, you know, when I'm trying to get him to open up. Because I asked him last night, I was like, everything okay? Yeah. And I'm like, okay. What do you want to talk? No. And so I changed the subject. I just talk about something stupid like TikTok or something like, and then all of a sudden he starts opening up. And so I agree with you when you said, you know, I think it comes down to, it's easy for someone of my generation to say, well, they're lazy and they got TikTok rot brain and this, that, and the other. But why? You know, have you ever stopped to understand? You know,
that's a tough question. One thing that my generation has that a lot of generations before us is we have access to any information that we want.
Yeah.
So in my beliefs, I think we're actually smarter than y'all's generation was by a long shot. And I may be completely wrong, but I think oftentimes, and I hate to say this, but oftentimes parents put their child in front of a PlayStation or put them in front of a TV or put them in front of TikTok, and they haven't never been able to get out of that.
Yeah.
Now.
And didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're all right.
But whose fault do you think that is? Do you put that blame on the parents?
If it's a young kid, it's definitely the parents.
Okay.
But
I agree.
I think whenever a boy wakes up, or even a girl, you know, I don't know a whole lot about girls, and I'm in trouble because we're girl dads now.
Yeah.
But, you know, when a boy wakes up, somewhere around, I don't know, for me it was 15, 16 years old. And I was like, I can do whatever the hell I want to do. Excuse my language, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss or not.
You're fine.
But I can do whatever I want to do. And, you know, at first I chose some bad things to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can go smoke pot at school in the bathroom. Well, you know, who's going to stop you unless you get caught? But once you get caught, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, that's part of who I am too. But I do blame that on the parents. But after... like this, I got this one guy in my life, and I'm trying to talk him into it. He's born in 2004, so I guess he's what, 20,
Looks like
21?
21 now, yeah.
Yeah,
he's
21 now, and that's what his parents did. They put him in front of a computer, and you know, he had restricted internet access, unrestricted internet access.
Okay, yeah.
And so, to me, that's the worst thing that could ever happen to a teenage boy. I don't know if you agree with that. It's fun for a few years. Yeah. But to me, that's the worst thing because you fall down rabbit holes and not trying to sound conspiracy-like, but there's a lot of evil out there that's trying to take the good from people, and it'll suck it out of you. And he's 21 years old, never worked a day in his life. He hasn't came out of the house in like 3 years. And it's like,
oh, wow.
Grandparents do his shopping for him, and I'm talking to his grandparents, and I'm like, guys, y'all got to stop. What happens when y'all die?
Yeah.
And, like, he's not going to know how to pay a power bill. He's not going to know how to go grocery shopping. He doesn't know how to drive. He doesn't know how to fish. And it's like, I won't never say that boy's name in public.
Yeah.
But, it's like, y'all got to do better than that. Y'all are enabling this. It's the same thing as a drug addict. Somebody somebody wants to borrow $20 of my dollars. I don't carry cash. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
And that what they're doing to him is enabling the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, please stop.
Oh,
He's never going to be a man. He's going to be 40 years old and paying, which, granted, this is a good thing too, but like paying somebody to bring his Walmart groceries to him.
Yeah. I can't stand the what is it, the online shopping.
Yeah.
And I know COVID, the pandemic, it kind of did all that, and it's stuck, because I was at Walmart earlier, and there they are. There's those blue carts and stuff. But that is interesting as far as like you said. I definitely look at, like, a joke I always used to make is kids have ADHD, ADD, and IPAD. Like the iPad. That's their problems and stuff, because and of course people see it. When you go to the store and you see a kid just or a restaurant even, and see a kid sitting there, and it's like, talk to them. Like, interact with them. And that's one thing. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not a perfect parent by any means. So if anybody takes offense or wants to criticize me, go have at it. But I've always tried with Annie. I've always tried to, I let her watch my phone. I do, because because I part of me doesn't want her to be totally left out, because you'll see other kids that get those, and I was the type of kid, I was oblivious a lot of times when it come to stuff like, I didn't know what the coolest rap songs or whatever.
Right.
I was more into soundtracks. I was more into like the stuff that people would make fun of you for, and kind of still am. But but anyway, I want her to kind of be more knowledgeable of kind of what's out there, like the trends and stuff, because like you said, that's the world y'all live in now. You have access to everything. And but anyway, I also tried to mix that with a good variety of, we go to the park, we go hang out. I talk to her. How's your day? I know about her boyfriend at school, and but I know that's all fun and everything because she's 4 and stuff. But that's the way I kind of feel like. Going back to what I said about what you said about like the paying attention and working with someone versus just whatever, and just and like, oh God, I can't get him to stop crying. Here you go. Here's your phone. Here's your iPad. I think it's kind of like I've always, like you said about bad stuff. You got good and bad, but but to me the best thing's moderation. If and there's going to be things that people do, and you don't have to like it, you don't have to love it. You can love it or whatever. But it's just. I think it just needs to be a variety, and I think everything just kind of needs to be moderated and guided. Instead of criticize. We talked about that too. All these wrestling people love to to criticize people, but that's where they fail, because they don't understand. Yeah. Like your dad, not your dad would say something. I would get what he was saying. I would get the context of what he said.
Right.
But not everybody did, and everybody's quick to point
showing somebody out.
And what is that? So I've always looked at that. Try to understand first.
Well, we also live in the offended world nowadays. Everybody's offended at everything.
Oh, I'm waiting for somebody to get offended by what I've said or what you've said or anybody in the past has said so far.
I'm curious to, and this is just something I thought about. I'm curious to know if that's a phone issue.
Yeah.
If were people this offended back in your day before phones became a thing?
No, because
my dad and y'all have a little bit of a generational gap, kind of like me and you did. But Dad said if you had a problem with somebody, oftentimes you went behind the school and y'all settled it, and the teacher said, "Oh, that's just boys being boys."
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays you look at a kid wrong, you smell at a kid wrong, you do anything wrong.
I was told this by a parent last night, and I'm glad you brought this up. I was talking to her because she's an old school parent, like like my dad was, like, because she grew up with old school grandparents.
Right.
And her kid right now is, we had to go to the counselor because he was being a boy, scuffling, putting hands on, which is not good, but like you said, I mean, it's like, what's the level of it? Did he go beat somebody up,
right.
or were the boys just being boys? Were they scuffling a little bit? But I digress. She was telling me that the way the counselor says now is that, it's a lot of new, gentle type of stuff. And the one thing that kind of got me that she said was, we got off talking about like how I was afraid to go home because spankings existed, and my parents didn't go fuss the teacher. They believed the teacher. They fussed at me. Like if I got in trouble, I remember walking out to Dad's truck being like, oh God, I don't want to go home, because I didn't know if they called and talked to him yet, or if I had to tell him and stuff. And of course I get a spanking. She said that now counselors or people at school, if a kid said that, if I was a kid in 2025 and I said that to a counselor, the counselor said that they would do everything they could to keep them at the school, wouldn't let them go home. And I'm just like, it kind of made me raise my eyebrows a little bit, because I was like, it's definitely not like it was. But but like you said, there was no phones, there was no social media. If you had a problem with somebody, I don't know how many times I went behind the playscape, because the teachers would sit on one side, and then there's the playscape, the big play gym, and then behind it was our little fight pad. Yeah. And if we had a problem, we would basically go, all right, well, all right, Matt, I have a problem, you have a problem, so when recess comes, we're gonna go take care of it. And we'd win some, we'd lose some, but then afterwards, I used to be friends with most of these people, because you would get it out. You would be like, win or lose. I mean, I've lost my fair share of fights. I've won my best share of fights, Right. But in the end, it's like, it's kind of therapeutic. I guess that's why I kind of like doing what I do now with martial arts and stuff. Now, of course, things have changed there too. You can't really beat up kids like you used to. But I mean, it's. I think that's a good outlet, and wrestling is another one. It's the same way. Wrestling goes back to what I said. You got the ball. It's all about you, win or lose, you win some, you lose some.
Well, and I think that might be one of the big problems with some of my generation and some of your generation, is a lot of them you can tell have never been punched in the face.
Oh gosh, yeah. I can always tell that.
They like to run their mouth online a lot, and I've had my fair share of running my mouth online, but I haven't done it. There's that one boy a few years ago that's coming to the O show that just blew up on me out of nowhere, and I'm like, dude, what? I'm doing everything I can for you, and that's beside the point. We ain't here to badmouth anybody, call anybody by names, but so you can tell a lot of people have never been punched in the mouth, and it's funny to me, because it's like, man, why are you being like this? We could just settle this. We could be friends. We could talk about it like grown men, or I know a place where there's an awesome wrestling mat and a lot of boxing gloves.
Oh, I've always told people, like, my gym I've had for over 20 years. I remember I used to tell people, like, if you got a problem with somebody, even if it's not me, if you got a problem with if I'm just a third party, come to the gym. We can put on pads, we can put on boxing gloves, we can put on headgear, whatever you want to do, and it's totally legal. No one's going to get in trouble for assault. No one's going to have the police called on them. No one's going to. No, because I'm not going to call them, And I remember I used to do fight nights, allegedly fight nights, and and it's like I said, and I still remember guys would. I remember when I was going to college, two guys, I let them come, because I had some boxing gloves. I let them come to the gym, and we had a big group, and we would just play around and box. And I remember these two guys at school in the morning, they were just back and forth. Reminded me a lot of me in like high school and elementary school and middle school. But and I just went over there and nudged them, and I said, hey man, you do realize, just come to my gym. If y'all got it, I bet y'all can resolve all your issues. And they did, and a bunch of guys came. I still have that on tape somewhere. I recorded it. I say on tape because I had one of those digital cameras, that had the tape, I still got it somewhere. I just have to find something to play it on. But they took care of business. And then the next day we go back to school the next day, and they're just like, they're fine.
They're probably best friends at that point.
Probably, yeah.
You know.
But you couldn't tell that the day before. But like you said, I just think people, you know, it kind of go, like you said, goes into the online thing. People love to, they love to troll. They love to, you know, cause drama online because they think they're protected. But I've always said this. There's a few people in my life over the years that if I ever saw them in person, we would have a conversation. We'd have a very interesting conversation. I'll just leave it at that, you know?
Right. Well, and there's crazy people out there too.
Yeah.
You talk trash to the wrong guy.
Yep.
And you know, I've had my fair share of this in my past, and I've had to beat that demon, I guess. But you know, you start talking shit to me online. Who's to say I won't show up at your work?
Yeah.
You know, and I've thought about that often. I'm like, what are you gonna do if I show up to your work after you close the store or the car wash or you know, something like that? And you know, no names thrown out there, but I've thought about it, and you know, that's a scary place to be. You have to, you know, as a man, you have to get past that. You have to be like, I'm gonna be the bigger man. Yeah. No matter how bad I don't want to.
Oh, that's the hardest thing.
But I'm gonna move on, and I know this guy would never say this to my face.
Oh yeah.
I know he's not. I'm never gonna see this guy again. You know, and
yeah.
I don't think people understand that. But going back to the thing you said about, you know, it's a great outlet for boys. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact statistics because, you know, everything's put online nowadays, but I think like 45% of boys under the age of 12 nowadays are prescribed Adderall.
Oh, wow.
And it's an ungodly number of boys that are prescribed Adderall because they have ADD or ADHD. And to me, that's not necessarily the answer to it. What has the parents tried? What has the school tried? What has anybody in that child's life tried? The uncles, the aunts, whoever. Yeah. You know, what have they tried before they go to something along the lines of meth, you know? I know Adderall is not meth. Yeah. But it's as addicting as meth. Coming off of it, you don't want to eat. Oftentimes, you don't want to sleep. Mm-hmm. Great cut and weight tool. Don't do that now, kids. But, you know, it's great cut and weight tool, but it's not good for you. Yeah. After years of use, it becomes other substance abuse. And, you know, wrestling, to me, oftentimes I've had people in my life tell me, you need therapy. No, I just need time to go find a wrestling mat. Yeah. And, you know, you've seen me at my worst and you've seen me at my best. And probably both of those were on a wrestling mat, you know. Yeah. I remember one night, we hadn't talked for like 6 months, and I called you and I said, Bobby, I need to come over. Yeah. I need my ass whipped tonight. Yeah. You know. And I came over and everything was good. And by the time I left, my mind was completely clear. And I was like, it doesn't matter what that guy says anymore.
It works. Like you said about, I don't know how many parents will call me, call the gym, and it's very similar. My kid went to doctor. They said the kid's ADHD, and I don't want to put him on medicine. So they said martial arts. And I've even wrestling too. I mean, I've even said that to people, like if they're in school, you know, because I'm that type of person, you know, if somebody can't afford it, I always veer them toward wrestling because in school, wrestling is part of the program as long as you're in public school. Right. And to me, I've always felt like those are your two anchors. You know, martial arts or wrestling is a good gateway to, like you said, those outlets to find as far as, you know, getting that out there. And I was never prescribed ADHD, you know, because old school, you know, back in the day, they didn't just throw medicine at everybody.
You were a boy.
Yeah, and parents were just like, no, he's a boy, you know. But I do look at a lot of the symptoms that they talk about. I think I've always had ADHD, but I've been able to manage it through martial arts, through wrestling, through just, you know, playing with the boys, you know, and just hobbies, you know, and I think, yeah, like you said, I think a lot of times, you know, people tend to just throw medicine at you, and you know, it isn't always the answer. It is and I do appreciate the parents to do that because I get a lot of them, and I do everything I can to help them, and more times than not, the kids do better through martial arts because they have an anchor. They have an anchor in their life. It's not just, you know, kicking and punching and learn how to beat people up because everybody thinks that's what it is. Just like wrestling's not about, you know, slamming people. You know, it's so much more than that, and there's so much more benefits that people, I think, sometimes refuse to see.
And I agree with that. And, you know, there's certain kids that have to have that medicine.
Yeah,
no
of course,
doubt,
of course.
You know, because of something that happened. And so we're not saying that medicine is never
no,
that
not
answer.
At all. Yeah.
But, you know, you say, that's funny, you say about the characteristics. To this day, I can't pay attention in a lecture. You
Yeah.
send me to a lecture,
Yeah.
I'm zoned out within 15 seconds thinking about something completely off topic.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
I'll start cleaning your wall right there, and then all of a sudden I'm on the door. Well, I forgot to clean that spot right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And, oftentimes I think the characteristics of ADHD and stuff like that is the same characteristics as somebody who's got drive.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that medicine kills that drive.
It does.
And then all of a sudden,
Sometimes.
And then all of a sudden, you got an 18-year-old boy who's been on it all his life, like my best friend. Not gonna call him names.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and then, he's got to come off that Adderall to be able to do something else. But then he's on something else, and it's like, man, what do you traded one vice for another vice? Well, I'm not addicted to this one no more. Well, you are addicted to this one now.
Yeah.
And, I have my addictions. Nicotine is terrible for me.
Yeah.
I dip way more than I should. So, I'm not throwing no stones by no means. It's a conversation that I wanted to have with a martial arts instructor.
Yes.
Because it's something I see in my everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like,
well, I think we all have vices. Everybody has a vice, but I think, like you said, nicotine, those kind of things, they're amplified because it's so out there, and everybody has their opinion on it. And but yeah, I've always said that. It goes back to what I said about moderation. I mean, I don't know. You think about stuff like that, but then think about food. Think about the food that you put inside of you. And it's not just nicotine's not the only thing that's bad for you. Just like but yeah, it's on what you put in your body, and you got your purists that won't put anything in their body because it's a temple. But
right.
Like I said, I'm of a mind, moderation. If something can help you, in moderation, but don't the addiction. That's the slippery slope though, because I've always been fortunate enough that I've never had really an addictive personality. But I know a lot of people that have had, and and I definitely understand their journey. When they're trying to, and it's hard. It's hard.
Well, see, for me, the script is flipped on that. You don't have an addictive personality. I get addicted to whatever I do.
Yeah.
So you put me in front of a TV for 12 hours and let me play PlayStation. When I go to bed and wake up in the morning, I want to play the PlayStation. And it becomes a problem oftentimes because, like, you put me with my daughter, that's all I want to do.
Yeah.
You put me at work working a 12-hour shift. By the time I get off work, I want to stay at work.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing to be a part of. And, I don't really know, but you were saying earlier about how you didn't use this word, but that I'm an anomaly for my generation.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that's because of martial arts.
Yeah.
And most of the anomalies, I can call a couple of them by name. Jory's one.
Mm-hmm.
Jory's an anomaly for our age group. He tunnel visions towards what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets it. And I wish him all the success in the world.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of guys have come through your gym the same exact way.
Yeah.
In my generation, but. For me, it was wrestling. I started wrestling in 6th grade. I went and tried out for the basketball team.
Yeah.
Coach told me on the first day, I was the first one cut. He said, dude, you're 4'11".
Yeah.
And you ain't got footwork.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. Well, I went to school the next day, and I remember crying about it that night, being heartbroken, telling my dad, I got to play a sport. That's how you get all the chicks in middle school, Dad. I got to play a sport.
Yeah.
They aren't going to like me if I'm just playing with my Pokemon cards. I have to play a sport.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, find a sport. He's like, all your cousins do wrestling, but he was completely against wrestling because my cousins were doing USA wrestling.
Yeah.
Which is completely different than school wrestling.
Yeah.
And so he was like, I can't drive you to them events. Well, I remember calling him from PE class. Coach Hall was our PE teacher, and he was also the wrestling coach. And he was like, he saw me upset, and he's like, you usually play basketball every day. Why aren't you shooting the hoop? Basketball is not for me, Coach.
Yeah.
And he saw me down in the dumps, and he's like, come try out for the wrestling team.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you weigh what, 85 pounds? I don't have an 86-pound wrestler this year. He's like, you might love it. So I remember calling my dad, and my dad was like, not no, but hell no. I can't take you. He said, I don't have the money for the hotel rooms. I don't have the gas to take you out there. And so then I told Coach Hall, and he said, can I talk to your dad? And so Coach Hall got on the phone, talked to my dad, and he was like, hey, man, he's going to be riding the school bus. He said, this is no different than if he played basketball. And so my dad was like, how much money do I have to give y'all for him to wrestle? And Coach Hall was like, well, I'll pay his $100. I said, if you let him come to practice today and he likes it, I'll pay his $100 for gear. And so, I went there, and this is crazy because I went 2 days before the first match.
Yeah.
Before the first middle school match. Nobody in my weight class to wrestle off against. I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, when I was younger, I'd put my dad in the cripple cross face.
Yeah,
and I knew
yeah.
Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Slim J.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought wrestling was. You know, I was going in there. Slim J was my favorite. And, you know, there's a whole story behind that. I kept getting in fights in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd literally be sliced bread and kids at school and
Yeah.
grabbing my nuts. And, you know, I'm
Yeah.
Slim J, Buster.
Yeah.
Not knowing anything about what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but I made a nickname. I was Slim C.
Slim C.
And while that wasn't the greatest role model for me at the time, he was a face, but he did do some, it's like Stone Cold.
Yeah.
He did a lot of things maybe a 5th grade old boy shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But, you know, I went into that wrestling practice thinking, you know, I'm Slim C. You know, who's going to compete with me, Buster?
Yeah.
You know, got him, grab him. And I went to my first match. They taught me a double leg takedown, and they taught me top and bottom position.
Yeah.
And they were like, good luck, kid.
Good luck. Yeah.
And so I'm going out there wrestling 86 pounds, and I go out there and wrestle this kid. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I remember this. This tells you how bad the match was. The score was 20-19 for two first-time wrestlers, and I ended up winning. And like he got a reversal on me, and I'm trying to, you know, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I remember trying to turn into him and throw him to his back or something. I have no idea the time. I have no idea the points. I've been in this for 2 days.
Yeah.
And then my coach just looks at me. He's like, "You got to get away if you want to win." Well, my mind went, "Oh, this is all I got to do to win." Boom, I got away, got the 1-point escape as soon as the time ran out. And there I was, 2019. And there's a picture of it, and you can find it somewhere on Facebook where they raised my arm. And I'm just trying to look like Slim J, like Buster.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the start of my journey. And, you know, it evolved and it evolved and evolved. My first season, I probably wrestled for 3 months. Once wrestling season was over, it was over. And I remember Dad bought me a Brock Lesnar video, like a DVD from a pawn shop over there real close to CVS.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was a pawn shop right there, and we went in there, and he bought me a Triple H and a Brock Lesnar. Well, Brock Lesnar, I remember he was doing these, like, push-ups on sticks and carrying a 300-pound log. Mm-hmm. So there I was. I went outside, and I was like, I'm going to be Brock Lesnar. You know, it switched from Slim J to being Brock Lesnar just overnight because I saw how much of a beast. And so I'm going out there finding the biggest log I can find, trying to carry it in our field. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it evolved and it evolved and it evolved and it evolved. And ultimately, you know, freshman year was a real rough year. When you're a 106-pounder wrestling seniors that are 106 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
It becomes a whole different nightmare.
It sure does.
That was a year I had to compete against 2 of my cousins for the same weight class. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I had to switch a gear, and they were trying to play the friend game with each other, like, oh, whoever wins is the better wrestler, that's it. And, you know, I look back on it now, and I'm disappointed in myself, but it also made me who I was. I remember flipping that switch. We're friends till we shake hands.
Yeah.
And then we're not friends anymore. I'm going to kill you. Mm-hmm. And that was my mindset. And they were friends with me during them 6 minutes. And they were way better wrestlers than I was. No doubt, because they had been doing it for so much longer. They'd done the USA. They went to compound wrestling. They trained with Jeff Bedard. You know who's a Reinhardt coach now? He was the compound.
He's at Reinhardt now?
Yeah, he is at Reinhardt.
Okay.
He's killing it there, too.
Yeah.
But, you know, and we went and did that. But I just remember flipping that switch, and I was like, I'm going to run 5 miles every day during the summer. Mm-hmm. And when the time comes, you're a better wrestler than me, but when with 30 seconds left in a 6-minute match, what are you going to do? Because I know what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And I remember both of them kids would kill me up until that year. Yeah. You know, faced a lot of staph infections that year, just didn't take care of my body. I was also halfway in love, I guess. Yeah. And so oftentimes didn't do the things I was supposed to be doing, but my drive made me do some of the things I'm supposed to be doing. You know, you just, instead of taking a shower as soon as you get home, you want to text for 2 hours. Yeah. And not always the best thing.
Well, they always say the 3 distractions. When I was coaching, I used to tell all the kids the 3 distractions is job, car, and significant other. Yeah. You know, and it's most times girls. Yeah, because you know if
especially at that young of an age.
Yeah, and I always tell people, you have to have theoretically, I know there's privilege, I guess, but you got to have a car to get, you got to have a job to get a car, and you got to have a car to get a girl, you know, and that's the trifecta. And that was usually the top 3 excuses of why people gave up, you know, and they didn't, So I get it. It's definitely a distraction. One thing I wanted to go back to real quick, because you were talking about it. You said the reason that you were cut from the basketball team is because you were 4'11".
Yes, sir.
The great thing, and this goes back to me being biased about wrestling, the great thing about wrestling is weight classes, because you were 86 pounds. You weren't going up against guys that were 190 pounds, 275 pounds. You were going up against people the same weight class as you. So it goes back to, it was almost like as much different weight, you're still equal.
Right.
You have just as much of an important job as the heavyweight. You know, and so, but stuff like football, you gotta eat. I mean, heck, one of the football coaches used to tell me when he was going through school, he'd have to go eat ice cream every day to keep his bulk, because he had to be 300 pounds because he's on the line. I got a nephew that, is a senior year right now in football, and he's jacked up. And then of course in basketball, being tall is the advantage, but, and it kind of goes into, the social aspect, guys and girls can't help their height, but that's what I liked about wrestling, is the fact that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, like you said, Slim J was just as important as Brock Lesnar, and they're both two different sizes. And that's why I always looked at Slim J. I mean, he was, until he bulked up, he was a small guy, and, but he could still go. He could still go.
I'm a full believer that pound for pound, even over Bobby D, that Slim J's probably the toughest guy in Georgia independent wrestling history.
I'll go ahead and give that to him, because I mean Slim J. What I've really respected about Jeremy is his longevity, and he's still going. And I know he's getting on up there in age, because I'm getting on up there in age. Because do you remember? It's been over 10 years now since we wrestled. God, it was 2014 when we wrestled that. Yeah. And, but I respect the crap out of him, because he's still going. He's still doing, and
probably at a higher level now than he was back when I was worshiping the ground he walked on,
Yeah.
And as weird as it is to say, and this just goes to show you that you can take anything from anything. His attitude in the ring is what made Cory Garrison part of Cory Garrison. It's part of putting that time into a young man.
Yeah.
And he did it in ways that he didn't even know. As I got older, he would talk to me and be like, "Man, you're bulking up. That's the coolest thing ever for me." When I'd see him over at the O show, and he'd be like, "Dude, you're bulking up."
Yeah.
I like to see that, you know. And then when I wanted to take it to the next level, "Hey, Slim, how do I bulk up?" Eat a whole jar of peanut butter a day.
Yeah.
What?
Oh yeah.
And so it was cool. And so, and I've told him that before in my adult years, that Slim J is part of the reason I have the drive that I have, because if this little, and I don't know how much he weighed. They used to bill him at 180, but I bet he's 180 now.
Well, he has the gimmick of 187, because 187. Get it? If you know, you know.
Yeah.
The police code. Yeah. 187.
So that's what they always billed him at. But I knew back then he was 187 pounds.
Yeah.
He was probably. I'm 145 now. He was probably 145 pounds.
Yeah.
But there he was, 145 pounds, Slim J, fighting Iceberg.
Yeah.
And taking it to Iceberg like never before. And you can say what you want about pro wrestling, but young Cory sitting in the front row took that lesson that, oh, shit, he's getting after it. I'm going to go get after it against guys my own weight.
Yeah.
It's weird how that kind of thing works. And I still take that into my life sometimes. Like, sometimes you got to do sketchy things at work, sketchy things in life, especially being a man. You got to do something that you really don't want to do. Oftentimes, and I don't do it in a manager setting, but, oftentimes I'll grab my nuts and say, got him, grab him.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's a guy thing. It's a guy thing. Yeah.
It is.
I mean, but that is, Slim, I remembered, just watching him. I remember when I first met him, was working at Movie Gallery at the video rental store, and I remember both me and him were closing one night, and didn't really know him that well. And he was playing the Randy Orton entrance theme at the time, early 2000s, whatever. I can't remember. I know he's went through so many of them, entrance themes. I think it was the "Hey, nothing you can say," whatever. And I remember I looked at him, and I always remember this, and I've told this story a lot. I looked at him. I said, "Are you a wrestling fan?" Because I was a wrestling fan, And he just looks at me with that Slim J smile, and he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
and then we got in the conversation. I didn't realize he was a wrestler, and then he invited me over, and I remember watching his first match. Yeah, he looked literally like Slim Shady. Yeah, he looked literally like when he come out. I was like, oh, so he got the Eminem thing going on and stuff, and I thought it was cool because it fit him. And because he was a small guy. But then, like you said, watching him face guys like Iceberg and Nemesis and even Azrael, these guys are just bigger than him, but he can hold his own. And I mean, it definitely didn't look like a weight thing.
No, and I mean, every part of his game, the promo, the high flying, the brawling, the technical wrestling, you could take the 4 best in all 4 of those categories in Georgia wrestlers and say, who can I plug? You know, I've been so removed from independent wrestling, you know, with my job, and just got burnt out on it.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Met some of the guys, and I was like, man, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah, it's like kind of like don't meet your heroes type thing too.
Yeah,
you know?
It's exactly like that. And you know, not saying that about Slim, because everything I know about Slim, has been awesome. But you could take, you know, he could get in there and he could brawl with Nemesis. And Nemesis was a great brawler. He could get in there and technical wrestle with you, and he could get in there and high fly with Fred Yehi. Yeah. I can't say his name. I'm sorry. Yehi.
Fred Yehi. Yeah.
And you know, he could get in there and cut promos better than most people I remember.
He still can.
In 35, 40 seconds, he got his point across. You know, he's coming to whoop your ass.
Yep.
And what are you gonna do about it, Buster?
Buster.
And so, you know, I walk around the house now, and you know, what are you gonna do, Buster?
Yeah.
And you know, that was always my thing as a kid, and probably isn't something I should have been saying as a kid, especially at school.
Well, like you said, I mean, we would get in trouble wearing the wrestling shirts because me and Tony D, we were in psychology senior year, and he was all 4 Horsemen. I was all NWO, and we'd be wearing our shirts, so we'd be like doing the Too Sweet, and he'd be like that. And it was probably stuff that we probably wasn't the best thing to say because the teacher finally banned the shirts and wouldn't let us do it anymore. But it was a fun time. But you know, we're almost out of time because I gotta get to my real job. But one thing I wanted to leave because there's so much more we could talk about. You could come back.
Yeah, we kind of went completely off the rails.
No,
here,
it's
but
okay.
It happens.
Hey, I love this. Like I said, I just love having conversations. I think it's fun, and anybody wants to listen to it, it'd be great.
Absolutely.
But you said about, you know, people have their opinion on pro wrestling, but I think the one thing that no one can really, or hopefully most people can agree on is, you know, pro wrestlers, one of their number one things is making you believe. You
Absolutely.
know, everybody knows what pro wrestling is. Everybody, I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you know the structure of pro wrestling. But Slim J was one of those guys that, you know, no matter weight, size, whatever, he could make you believe. Like you said, like you could make you believe him and Iceberg were really
equal,
could really go, you know, mano a mano and stuff. But yeah, man, I'd love to have you come back. I know we were talking earlier. We talked about a lot of fun stuff, and we still didn't even touch on the MMA stuff and everything. So I'd love to talk about that. But like I said, I gotta get to work. But I appreciate you coming on, man. Seriously, I'm glad you reached out to me, and hope to have more. You know.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, we sure will.
Good deal, man. So let's see. Let me if I can figure this out here. All right. Thank everybody for watching. It's Bobby D. Make sure you do all the like, sharing, and subscribing and all that fun stuff. And, you know, I'll see you in the next one.